Good afternoon and welcome. I'm here with my friend Wendelyn Duquette. She is the president of QuickStart, and we're going to talk about some financial brass tacks for nonprofits. These are facts and things that you will want to know, and if we don't get to them all today, we're going to get to them during Finance Fridays, which is a new webcast series that we are launching at Common Good Vermont along with Wendelyn and with sites across the state. So you will be able to gather with your colleagues and your friends all across the state to watch the presentations that we're going to make. So we'll tell you a little bit more about that. Wendelyn, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
It's great to have you here.
Well, thank you.
So we first met talking about results and how nonprofits could really demonstrate the difference that they're making. So I know that interests you deeply.
Yes, it does. And I come from a for-profit world originally, but my heart really is with nonprofits. And I think that the work that I do is really linked in with that, which is helping nonprofits get clear and good and concise information efficiently out of their accounting software, whether it's QuickBooks or something else. QuickBooks is the software I know the best, to be able to tell their stories quantitatively for their donors and to make the case to their constituents and the people that fund them, and to be better prepared to get the funding they need.
So what do you think are the biggest rocks in the road for nonprofits who want to be financially responsible and accountable and be able to tell their stories?
What I see is that it's really challenging to hire and manage people that can set things up in a way that's going to give them the information easily. There's really two pieces in that. The first is it's really hard to hire somebody and understand what their knowledge of QuickBooks is, because almost anybody who's written a check in QuickBooks will tell you, oh, I've worked with QuickBooks, which is not a wrong statement. I think it's really hard for any organization to be able to quantify and qualify how well does this person know QuickBooks. And there's a big difference between being able to operate QuickBooks and being able to design the system to efficiently get information out of it. And in that, with that, people come in, they're charged with setting things up, they've been hired to do this, they expect they're supposed to be able to do it, they do the best they can. And these are not bad people, they are not, they have not been hired for the wrong job, they were given a task that was beyond them. So what I like to do and what I really take great joy in is setting QuickBooks up in a way that is simple for that person to operate, and that the organization gets the output that they need to manage both to their mission and their programs, but also to be accountable to their grantors if that's a piece of what they need to do.
So how do you do that?
So how do I do that?
I know that you have some tools that you use that could be helpful for nonprofits to assess where they're at and what kind of help they could use.
Right. So very often nonprofits know that they're in the weeds themselves and they'll just call me. And I've had, should I give you an example?
Yeah, love that.
So one of my favorite clients, Lemoyle Family Center, had a change coming up in their business office. Their controller was leaving, and the director wanted to really step back and just see what was the right next move. And he wasn't positive hiring a full-time controller made sense, and he wanted another set of eyes on things. So a colleague of mine introduced us, and we came in and I looked at the way they had things set up, and what we did was we really used more tools in the database than they had accessed, because there are a lot of dimensions to the QuickBooks database that allow you to track things in multiple dimensions for grants and mission purposes. And he was able to be very clear about the management reporting he needed, and the controller that I worked with for a long time was able to clarify for me the grant reporting piece that was also important, because they're both important. And in the process of working with her, I explained to her a couple of the other dimensions of the database that we could use to track the grants and keep the programs going. And in the end of the day, when we were done, and I worked with them, I actually was their outsourced controller for 2 years. So they hired me to be their controller and to redesign their system. And what we did is we went from a database or a reporting system that was managed, and it took them about 40 hours to create the reports that they needed, which were mostly grant reports, and they were only being able to do that on a quarterly basis. And when we were done, they were using about 30 spreadsheets to do that. And when we were done, we were able to produce management and grant reports in 4 hours in 2 spreadsheets. So it was a huge time saver for them in terms of being able to get great information out much more efficiently. And the woman that had set it up, she worked really hard. She was a very smart woman, probably smarter than me. And she just did the best she could with what she understood. And so, what I bring to the table is just really understanding the dimensions of the database and how the reporting can be pulled out.
So one of the services that you provide is this file assessment.
Right.
Can you talk about that?
It's a file checkup.
Yeah.
Just get a checkup.
Yeah.
And it's a great way for organizations to sort of get a quick look into, if you have some questions you're not sure about, but things have been running along pretty well, you may not want to engage me fully initially. You might want to just find out, how are things looking. So what we do is we actually take a copy of your database, put it up in the cloud where we work, and run through about a 50-point check to see how are you using it. And I also ask people to provide me with the questions, the things that they're not comfortable with, or what are the questions that you have that you feel may or may not. Usually there's a reason they're asking me to do this. So why did you get here? So because I want to know, I want to be able to look for the things that may be of issue for them. And so we upload the file, I go through this, I prepare a written report, and then we have a 30-minute conversation about what I found. And I, for the most part, I rarely find things that I say are wrong. I question things because sometimes things are done in a peculiar way for a reason, or what appears to me to be a peculiar way. And because there are a lot of creative people out there that are really trying to do the best they can to make the system work for them. So it's really non-judgmental, just give you some information.
And then that becomes a blueprint for possibly areas that they could focus on and improve.
Yeah. And so sometimes people feel like they're all set. Sometimes people engage us to do more work, and it all depends on their resources and how they want to proceed. And sometimes we'll do that, and a year later we'll get engaged and do that work.
Now, on the 18th of March, we're planning a webcast on the topic of how to basically manage your bookkeeping and accounting staff so that you, as the executive director of the leadership, can be in charge even though you've delegated the work.
Right. So I'm really excited about this because I didn't start out working just with nonprofits. I've worked with a lot of mom and pops and larger organizations, up to $5 million organizations with hundreds of employees, to small businesses. And no matter what, the biggest challenge I find is that people start businesses or are executive directors of a nonprofit organization. They've got tons of skills and experience to fundraise, manage their staff, understand the programs that they need, but oftentimes what's the last skill that's required is a solid financial background. And so people don't have that skill set. They don't know what they don't know. So to manage the accounting staff becomes a challenge because you already feel at a disadvantage because you don't know as much as they know. And you're never going to know as much as they know, but you can know enough so that you can be asking the right questions and you can make sure that you're getting answers that make sense. And so that's a lot of what we want to talk about. And by doing that, you also, by having an interest and an active role in the management oversight of what's going on through the business office, is probably your single biggest protector against fraud. Because if people know you're looking, they're less likely to be doing things that are really in most cases, just become opportunities. It's not that somebody ever, probably some people do, but people find themselves stealing from organizations often it's just because the opportunity was there.
So the idea really is to mitigate risk.
Right.
And to be as careful with your financial data as you might be with the stuff in your office.
And your social security number.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I imagine, we're not just presenting this workshop so people can ferret out fraud in their organizations. I mean, that's something that's been in the news.
Oh boy, yeah.
But this is really about improving your financial practices and above all your confidence as an executive leader to understand your numbers.
Right, and I think the situation in the Lamoille Family Center was that and this is true of, and I actually just make a generalization, that a lot of the organizations that I work with, the business office is charged with that expertise, and they tell you how it is. And they say, okay, so no, we've got to do it this way because we're tracking the grants, and we have to have that information. Well, that's true. And so, what is an executive director going to say when they're told, well, we have to do it this way because of the grants? Compliance with your grants is really important. So how do you probe deeper to be able to maybe unlock some of the assumptions that from that perspective are absolutely true? And so it's not necessarily an obstructionist piece, but that's the reality of their world. And so how do we help you go through the process? And and sometimes it takes bringing in a third person to be able to take an objective look. And the file check is a great way to get started on that and see if that could help.
So on May 13th, we're going to do another webcast, and that's on this subject of tracking grants and programs using QuickBooks.
Right, and that gets back to the RBA pieces, which is very exciting. Right, so without a doubt, somebody who's skilled with accounting and managing the books and running the business office is going to have compliance at the top of their mind. You want that to be their focus, and you want them to be the people you rely on to make sure you are being compliant with your grants and payroll and all the other things that one needs to be compliant with. And so to get them to the point where they can pay attention to the importance of the mission, but so that's their focus. As an executive director or a program manager, you're more focused on, well, what's it costing me to run my program, and what are the results? How much is it costing us to have the results that we have for the different programs that we have? And that's really more from a management standpoint and an organizational perspective. What are we doing? And that follows more the lines of your organizational chart and how staff are supervised. And so that's not going to be the first perspective that the accounting staff often has. So, but it's critical for managing an organization. And so we're going to be talking about ways that you can use QuickBooks to do both. And that's the piece that people often aren't aware of, that you can do both, and that the organizations the reporting then becomes much more valuable in terms of fundraising, annual newsletters. You can speak to you can develop reports that speak to the mission. How much did we spend on different aspects of our mission? If you have specific RBA outcomes that you're tracking, you can often look at identifying how much did it cost us to put those together.
Oh, wow. I can't wait for that workshop. I really can't, because as we've talked about, our organization has, always struggled with being able to do that in QuickBooks. We maintain all these separate spreads to support it, and we always think there's got to be a better way.
Right.
So we're really looking forward to that one.
Right.
So just to sum up, we have 2 webcasts that are going to be taking place on the 18th of March and on the 13th of May, and they will be transmitted here from Channel 17 Studios live to locations across the state. We now have Manchester, Montpelier, and St. Albans, and Brattleboro, and possibly a couple other sites coming on, so that you'll be able to gather and watch those at your location. You won't have to drive very far at all to get access to Wendelyn Duquette's expertise and presentation. So we hope that you'll sign up for that at the Common Good Vermont website. The registration is open. And Wendelyn, is there any sort of last words that you have for nonprofits when thinking how to be more effective financially?
I think that if you have questions, you should find somebody who can, outside of your organization, to help you answer those questions, whether it's me or another accounting professional. I think if you have something that's niggling in the back of your brain, your neck, that doesn't feel quite right, don't let it sit there before it's too late.
That's great. And how do people get in touch with you, Wendelyn?
So you can find me on my website, QuickStartQB.com. I think, according to you, I've just launched a new one. It's been in the works for a while. I haven't seen it up yet, so hopefully that's all up and ready to go. And our phone number in Stowe is 253-6008. And we love to talk to nonprofits that have questions and see if we can figure out a way to help them out and be more effective.
Thank you so much. Wendelyn Duquette has been with us from QuickStart, and we're happy you could join us here at Common Good Vermont. Thanks for watching.